it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state. And they don't know what the Governor Trudeau.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister.
Good day.
If the Liberal Party was hoping the Prime Minister's resignation would immediately galvanize the Canadian electorate, they were sadly mistaken.
No Liberal realistically thinks they could turn around their fortunes just by changing a leader that they might overtake Pierre Poilievre's Conservative.
Let's say the candidate did have a lot of economic experience. Let's say the candidate did deal with crises.
You sneaky, you're running as an outsider.
I am an outsider.
There's not as much support in the caucus for Carney. They don't know if he's really got the political chops.
Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has declared victory.
President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never.
The first time I had two things to do: run the country and survive. I had all these crooked guys. And the second time I run the country and the world, because it's the world I'm trying to save.
We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States is over.
And he didn't just say that because of Donald Trump, because Canada's fears of American annexation through sneaky economic and cultural methods has always been a part of history. So that's why Canadians back then would say, we are a British colony, we're not the United States, and today it's for anyone who may be confused. Okay, really got the Yankees there, did you? Woo! Yeah, thank you, X. Basically, early Canada was gripped by a nation-building zeitgeist, so anything connected to sovereignty, such as free trade with America, was a big deal. But my point being is that this is not a new concept. In 1891, there was a whole federal election centered around free trade with the USA. But basically, Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, implemented the national policy, and what it did was put taxes, aka tariffs, on non-Canadian goods being sold in Canada. Why? Because at the time, American products were way cheaper, so Canadians were buying American stuff instead of Canadian. And that was bad for Canadian businesses, because they couldn't sell. And if Canada could not even protect its own industry from US competitors, then forget about even protecting the country's sovereignty. So the tariffs made the low American prices higher so that Canadian businesses actually had a chance to survive and grow. On the other hand, Wilfrid Laurier's Liberals supported tariff-free trade with the States because the conservative national policy was making things more expensive, especially affecting farmers, whereas free trade made things less expensive as well as give Canadian producers access to sell in the massive American market. Besides, better Canada-US relations could ease hostilities between the two nations. But Laurier lost the election because voters saw more risk than reward, and Laurier was accused of being a sellout to the States. So Laurier actually stopped promoting free trade, and the Liberals actually won the next election. And they governed for the next 15 years until in 1911 when Prime Minister Laurier made a trade agreement with the US, and then lost the election that same year. So, case in point, Canadians never really liked the idea of trading with the US.
Welcome to the new globalized economy.
And it looks like over time, the US and Canada decide to become best friends. The political parties also started switching positions on free trade during the time of Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who was deeply skeptical of trading with America due to the potential for Canadian dependency. So he rejected a proposed America-Canada trade deal and pursued closer economic ties with countries outside America to diversify trade. And he created the then government-run Petro-Canada to ensure Canadian energy independence. Still, Canada and the US were becoming closer, but a full trade agreement was not actually signed until 1988. Then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and US President Ronald Reagan were two leaders with an unusually close relationship. And they signed, oh my gosh, the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement. No tariffs, prosperity for all. But Canadians had raised eyebrows, and Mulroney wasn't let off easy by the Liberals.
I happen to believe that you've sold us out.
You do not have a monopoly on patriotism. And I love Canada. And that's why I did it, to promote prosperity. And don't you impugn my motives or anyone else's.
Once a country yields its energy.
We have not done it.
Once a country yields its agriculture.
Wrong
Once
again.
a country opens itself up to a subsidy war with the United States on terms of definition, to remain as an independent nation, that's the issue of this election.
Mr. Turner, I believe genuinely in what I am doing. It is right for Canada. I am nation building because this benefits Canada.
We built a country that deliberately resisted the continental pressure of the United States. For 120 years we've done it. With one signature of a pen. You've reversed that and will reduce us, I'm sure, to a colony of the United States, because when the economic levers go, independence is sure to follow.
Mr. Turner, with a document that's cancelable on 6 months' notice, Be serious.
That document relates to every facet of our life. It's far more important to us than it is to the United States, sir. Far more important.
Please be serious.
But was John Turner right to say that Canada would be reduced to a colony of the United States because when the economic levers... Oh guys, look, it's... Hello, fellow Canadians. I am President Obama. Yeah.
And we Americans can never say it enough. We could not ask for a better friend or ally than
Canada become our 51st state.
Free trade agreement.
Be serious.
No.
And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, we don't need a partner.
Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year?
$200 billion a year and more.
We don't need them for anything.
He said Canada would dissolve.
Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country. Of that, vast numbers.
Did you know 75% of all Canadian exports, that's roughly a third of the entire Canadian economy, is dependent on selling to the US? To illustrate the gravity of the situation, here's an example. 90% of Canadian steel and aluminum is sold to the States. And Trump's tariffs increased the price of Canadian steel and aluminum for Americans so that they buy American instead of Canadian. Now extend that impact to all Canadian goods sold in America, then say goodbye to a third of the Canadian economy, and say goodbye to prosperity and hello to poverty. This is not a trade partnership. This is getting cocked. And so yeah, when Trump was making all those threats, the reaction was reasonable. And just imagine the crash out the old Canadians who predicted this would be having as well. From Ronald to Donald, Canadian reliance on the US economy has grown exponentially. And whether or not Trump lifts his tariffs or not, that alone doesn't change the fact that both nations' economies are now extremely integrated together. But yeah, while Canada absolutely needs the US to sell, America doesn't go without a scratch either. That 97% of oil that Canada sells is 60% of America's oil imports. What, $8 a gallon? The tariffs on lumber affects housing costs. There's also dairy, sugar. That's why American grocery prices aren't going down. My point being is that this hurts everyone. But you might be thinking, doesn't Trump just want to protect American jobs? Just like how Canada protected theirs back then? Because certain areas like the Rust Belt did get bodied by globalization and free trade. Many blue-collar workers lost their jobs faster than you could say supply chain optimization, because the physical labor involved in these sorts of jobs started to become replaceable through automated means and was a lot cheaper in other countries. When Trump spoke to these particular groups of people, he told them that he'd bring their jobs back. Make America truly self-reliant again. No need for free trade. And that promise was one of the appeals that got him elected twice. But the problem is, times have changed. Tariffs just don't work the same as they did back then. I mean, look around you. Internet, phones, computers, electric vehicles. This is advanced technology, and the components required to make these are not easily obtainable. However, the international trading system allows you to gain access to these rare materials. Hell, even the factory jobs that Trump wants to bring back rely on international trade. For example, take a look at this Ford truck. To build it, factories need parts from Germany, Mexico, Korea, Canada, and etc. It's the United Nations on wheels. Put tariffs on these countries and you jack up the cost for American cars, and American companies suffer unless American factories are built and more Americans are laid off. And the result is more suffering for all, because Canada and other tariffed countries have to respond rationally with reciprocal tariffs, because if Canada cannot compete in the American market, then American competitors cannot be dominating the Canadian market. So at least in the short term, countries have to protect their jobs. But the result is mutually assured economic destruction for all countries. Every economy gets tanked. There is no economic basis to this effort, and the entire objective is archaic. I mean, take a look at what China posted. So, what's the point of all this? Is Donald Trump a moron? Yes? No. Actually, while we're all playing checkers, Donald Trump is playing Korean StarCraft. But it's not the type of motive that you think it is.
And so there's big differences between the way the Canadian economy is performed and the way the Americans have.
So is this about, like, lessening our relationship with the United States economically?
It's about enhancing our relationship with others.
So was Mr. John Turner correct? Are we a US colony? Well, not quite, but Canada is undoubtedly subordinate to the US market. But in 2025, this is Donald Trump's world, and this is precisely Trump's motive. But that will be a video for another day. And if you have any sort of feedback, I'd really appreciate if you can leave that in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everyone.